Good morning, afternoon, or evening, and welcome to the Hayseed night, where Adder has just been dismissed by Jov, as Jov has gone on to do whatever he is going to do for the kind of evening and night, and Adder is wandering all by himself in the empty and silent plaza. So let's see what happens. His victory had been but a brief rush against mediocrity, and now that he was alone, his mind sought the comfort of a familiar place, a seething pit in his chest. No, he had no business there. Otter had spent enough nights hungry and alone to learn to eat his emotions for dinner, but still his stomach protested and demanding to know when their next real meal would arrive. He could only walk a little farther to chase those thoughts away. No matter how resilient he was, he would eventually get tired and stagger his way back home, fall asleep in his little corner, dream a sleepless dream, and wake up to a drunk Jov crashing in. He'd head off to work and Aina would get him some food. Sleepless dream. That's right. He held no doubt in his heart that his boss would come back. What had he made such a fuss for? Aina had never missed a single day of work in the whole year he'd been working for her. And anyway, she was way stronger than him. What could he do? He had no reason to say grand words or worry like he did. He never had. The sparse groups of citizens and visitors all around him still celebrated this blessed day, dances and melodies and pastries. A drifter from down yonder the steps would never be allowed to take part in. This was just another empty day in the life of Adder. In the life of Adder Sind, son of Gerfas. An abrupt lapse of lucidity made Otter turn his head away from his hooves at last. His ears perked up and his fur stood on end as he tried to make sense of the careless trip he'd just taken. The music was deafening all around him, the crowd untraversable. He didn't know how far he'd walked or how he'd managed to make some space for himself, but it was obvious now that he had stumbled into some sort of performance. A stage where the whole city would be looking. What a dream. But a remote voice in the back of his thoughts told him that he didn't have time to find out what kind of show could attract such a crowd. That was not where he was supposed to be. He knew his gut hadn't been lying to him when he caught sight of a small, flickering light coming from a discreet tent around which the crowd seemed to be oddly absent. His eye wouldn't budge away from that curious flame shining in the dark. He sensed its offer, warm and loud. Otter didn't even consider for 1 second that he may have been too hungry to think straight. He ignored all the warnings common sense would have taught him and marched straight into the tent. Dusk was still a ways off, but it may have as well been midnight inside. Adder combed the darkness desperately, startled by the sudden change in illumination. Sweet, frightful clarity once more. What in the name of the Hadza was I thinking? He pondered in breathless silence as his mind started conjuring bandits, assassins, and monsters, ready to tear his cape into pieces and fashion toothpicks out of his horns for having been so reckless. But he didn't get to fret long, as his fears were interrupted by the birth of a flame in the corner of his sight. Its flare grew with unmeasured force, blinding him for a moment. He struggled to regain his vision, fearing those foes that only lived in his mind, foes he wouldn't face today either. Bathing in the light of an orb that was filled with fire, shaded in ways that made no sense whatsoever, awaited a silhouette. A very recognizable silhouette.
Took you long enough.
Of course it was her.
Yeah, it's not a living!
And all of a sudden, Adder wished he'd found a bandit instead. At least he would have felt justified in the terror that rooted his feet so firmly to the ground then. The boy remained immobile, eye fixed on the woman in front of him, following the million glitters the ruby necklace hanging from her neck reflected all over, dragging his attention right back to the extravagant spread of finely woven silks so carelessly tousled on her hair. Addersind was never much of an analytical boy in his day-to-day, but he became quite a sleuth when it came to attempting to pinpoint the line of work a dress revealed. And without revealing nearly a single thing, this one managed to have him at a complete loss. It was a pressing question he might have been too polite to ask, had the lump in his throat not taken care of that issue for him.
Don't just stand there. Take a seat.
I don't know. I've been sitting on my tail all day, and I got places to go, and I don't usually share tents with ladies, and...
Judging by her glare, she wasn't going to take no for an answer.
What am I saying? It'd have been mighty ugly of me to reject an invitation.
Otter did as asked and sat down on one of the many pillows laying around. Pretending to be crazy, escaping, begging the gods for mercy, breaking down and claiming he wasn't, in fact, a horn-eater, that this was just a mistake and he shouldn't be there. Otter's mind was bustling with ways of getting out of that situation. So, of course, whenever his mind was busy, his mouth was free to speak as it pleased.
Hi.
He spoke with a voice more akin to that of a fawn, whose antlers are just beginning to sprout, than that of a fully grown deer.
Nice place you got here. I like your cushions. These cushions over here and over there, they sure are comfy. What are they made of? They gotta be the comfiest cushions ever. Can I bounce on them, ma'am?
Please don't.
Okay, but I'm talking about your cushions, not your cushions, all right? Not gonna bounce on either, just want to make that crystal clear.
A mocking chuckle stabbed Adder's heart. Feeling even more self-conscious than he thought what he was capable of, he held on to his hooves and fixed his gaze on the ground, screaming inside as his face burned.
So it wasn't the contusion after all, huh? You're just like that.
Like what now?
Funny.
Funny? Me? Not one bit, ma'am. I ain't got a funny bone in my body. Doc and I ain't ever seen worse jokes than Adder scenes. Hold up. Didn't that sound like a poem just now? Well, darn. A poem ain't nothing but a dull song, Mr. Bard always says so. I'd hate to bore a fine lady such as yourself, so I better get...
Bore me? Please. With hands like those, you wouldn't look out of place in a traveling circus, or in some lord's court, if you're any good at juggling. In fact, I know a certain gazelle in dire need of entertainment. What do you say? One word from Joseph, and you will be working in a palace tonight.
Adder couldn't quite figure out if that was meant to be an insult or a compliment, but he was quick to decide that it was better to work for someone that didn't talk than for someone that talked about herself in third person.
I think I'm gonna pass for now, but I'll holler at you next time I'm fresh out of pride, ma'am.
A deep silence filled the tent. Adder cursed his luck and his good manners. He wanted to run away and hide, fearing that otherwise he'd commit a big mistake. The kind of mistake that would get him called a horn-eater for the rest of his life.
Well then, it was sure nice to see you again, but...
Would you like to know your fortune?
Adder turned on his heel, desperate to find out if her offer was indeed true. There was nothing that betrayed a lie in her words nor in her eyes.
Whoa! You're one of those gazelle fortune tellers? For real?
Let's just say they looked rather different back in Adder's town.
Well, slap my head and call me silly. I got you pegged all wrong, ma'am. Darn right I'd love to hear it. Oh, hold up. I lost my bag of coins. I ain't got a single dollar on me, so...
Something flew into the ground right beside Adder's foot.
My bag?
You dropped it right after you crashed the first time. I meant to give it back, but since you were so bent on running through that wall...
You didn't steal from it, did you?
Steal what? It's just filled with rivets.
Aha! That means you opened it!
So much for wanting to see you again. That was all. You can go now if you want.
A punch to the gut would have hurt Adder infinitely less than her words. What am I doing? He thought to himself, biting the inside of his cheek. No mere thief would have returned his bag, and sad as that was, no other person had ever gone so far for him. And so he sat down once more, looking at the finely yet peculiarly dressed woman in front of him with a mix of embarrassment, naivety, and just plain fear.
I don't suppose you accept rivets as payment.
That would depend on what you're paying for.
Getting my fortune told?
Just keep them.
Joseph rested her arms over the crystal orb, leaning closer to Adder.
All right! Can you look into the ball thing and tell me how my ma and pa are doing? Did any of my little bros get married yet?
That's cute, but it's a reading glass, not a magic mirror.
Right. How about the weather? Can you give them good harvests?
Take your prayers to the temple.
Oh, darn, that won't do either. Alrighty then, how about me? What do you see in this buck's future?
Your future? Why would you want to know anything about that? Life would be boring if you knew what waits around every corner. I'll read your past and justify your present.
But I already know those things.
I don't.
Adder was quite set on asking what she meant, but his brain shut down operations completely as the girl oh so casually decided to shuffle closer to him, a little lighter now around the shoulders without the cape weighing her down.
For example, we could talk about why you did what you did for me then, and figure out what I could do to return the favor now.
Her blue eyes spoke like an insinuating whisper. Her fingers walked over the cobblestone ground headed towards Adder's own hands as her face got ever so close.
I gotta insist, ma'am, that you definitely got the wrong bucket. But even if I ever did anything nice for you in my life, a simple thanks is more than enough payment.
I guess you could use a reminder too.
The soothsayer made no attempt to conceal her disappointment, much like no one ever made any attempt to explain to her what coming on too strong means. With apparent tedium, she grabbed the crystal orb and put it right between her face and Adder's. This time, she had no more pretensions than merely watching him.
Oh fire, tell me the secrets in the... Yada yada, stuff and bazaktet. I don't feel like switching languages now.
Her complete lack of professionalism made Adder feel for once at ease. After all, what would he do if he was indeed in front of a Sephi, one of those heinous Barhan wizards from far back in time? Cry, beg, try to escape? Wait, those were things he'd already thought of doing. As Adder was considering the subtle differences in the fears he felt when talking to a girl and imagining being burnt to a crisp by a witch, she watched him. And she kept on watching. And then she watched some more. The gazelle lifted her head from behind the glass as she squinted her eyes into fine lines. Whatever she was looking for, she couldn't find, but she still ducked behind the orb once more, hoping to reach some kind of conclusion. Focused with such intensity that her eyebrows could have split her forehead in two, and she wouldn't have noticed, Joseph pressed her mouth to one side, wiggled her nose, and opened her eyes so wide at him that Otter couldn't help but laugh.
Shush, it's easier with two.
She mumbled the last part to herself, but Adder was sure that she'd said eyes.
Oh, what's that? You ain't never done it with a one-eyed deer before?
Adder pressed his lips together like he wanted to make them disappear. Joseph merely rose an eyebrow. His accidental innuendo made him begin shaking from horns to hooves once more.
Screw this.
She pushed the orb away with an exasperated sigh. Before Adder knew what was going on, his face was in her hands and her face right in front of his.
I need to find out if it was you after all. Stay still.
A drumbeat in his ears, that was Adder's heartbeat, as she stared at him so intently. There was a lump in his throat. He did his best not to tremble. His eyes, began feeling heavy, though he tried to hold her gaze. She was muttering something, words about his past, but her voice became obscured by the noise of the bells, the crackling of the fire, the sound of her own eyelashes batting against each other.
It's really too sodding late to be dealing with pests like you. And yet, here we are, wasting my time and yours.
Hey, what's that supposed to...
Adder's complaint vanished at spear point. 2 guards had replaced the gazelle, one old and complacent, and one young, eager, and inches away from stabbing his nose.
Just who do you think you are?
Who do you think I am?
That was Joseph's voice. But as much as he tried to find her, Adder couldn't see her. In fact, he couldn't even move at all.
What? I won't fall for your bar and mind tricks, Gazelle. I don't care if you're Hayseed or a Hayseed. Only nobles are allowed to walk the royal pathway. No exceptions!
Adder felt a lump in his throat as he unwillingly looked over the railings that he was leaning against.
I don't suppose you expect me to jump off the bridge.
The younger guard opened his mouth to reply, but his partner cut in line.
Can't you see that you're scaring her, you dimwit? Take a step back!
What? But she's trespassing!
The younger guard got smacked in the head for his efforts.
Settle down, boy! You forgot to clean your ears this morning or what? She said she's Hayseed. Hayseed! This girl's far more than nobility, see? She's a queen. The queen of the desert rose, no less. Now that's what I call a fancy title.
Call it whatever you please. It won't change the fact I am the one and only Hayseed, and you are a dear with good taste. You must have heard my name in 100 whispers. So, just imagine how terribly worried Miss Rochelle will be if her favorite girl doesn't make it home before dawn.
Liar! There's no way the Desert Rose would have someone like you! Your kin shouldn't even be outside after curfew!
My kin? You mean gazelles who could buy your whole street?
So much for the open-minded youth. Forgive this fool, your majesty. He's so uptight I think he sat on his spear. I'm sure you know his kin. A fawn like him wouldn't know royalty if it spat in his face. He's got a point, though. Any gazelle could sneak up here and say she's a queen because she's the daughter of a goat with a bald spot on her head. You understand, right? We can't just take your word for it. Nothing personal, of course, it's just common sense. Here's a thought. Why don't you sway us with a little dance? I'm sure the Hayseed would do anything for her subjects.
What are you saying, you numbskull? We're on duty, and she's not even a... three's sake! We should just drag her to the dungeon and end this nonsense!
Yeah, spare me the lecture, kid. Hey, do one of those bar and dance things. That'll shut him right up. You know, the one with the fire and the bells and the...
The older guard cupped his chest and pretended to dance as he cackled, much to the revulsion of everyone involved. Adder could feel the tip of his tongue scraping against his teeth, far smaller and more well-aligned than he ever remembered them being. His patience was growing worryingly thin.
I could dance for you, if you don't mind having an early cremation.
Huh? Was that a threat just now?
Not at all. I'm just pointing out that I'm not dressed for the occasion. It would be a pity if your face was to catch fire and your skin burst into flames, turning your bones to charcoal inside your blazing corpse while your ashes moldered up here. Just because I didn't have a fireproof shirt.
Right. Well, it doesn't look like you have any other way to prove your words, Your Majesty.
I suppose I don't, but I bet my good friend Illigrab could find a way to prove them for me.
And walk you all the way across the city on the off chance we find that fidget arse of a tree sitting at his desk? We don't get paid that much, little lady.
A victorious smile crossed Adder's face, an opening at last.
I understand now. A discount isn't even remotely enough to cover the entrance cost of the Desert Rose on a poor, hard-working guard's salary. And that's not even adding the price of my performances.
The old guard's eyes shot open as he felt a few coins slipping into his hand.
Don't worry. I'm sure there's some places down the street that are better suited to your taste.
He remained transfixed by the money a moment longer until something seemed to click in his head all of a sudden.
Who do you take me for, scamp? We are honor-bound city guards. We won't get buffed by the likes of you.
What? Come on! This was more than enough last time. Why isn't it working now?
The guards didn't react to that sentence at all. It was like they hadn't heard her when Joseph's voice sounded loud and clear in Adder's ears. That thought passed as soon as it came. The quick, anxious looks the old guard was directing at his partner became the new focus of Adder's attention. The moment they locked eyes, the answer he'd been looking for became evident.
Of course. I should have noticed sooner. He's a new recruit, isn't he? Look at him. So eager and uptight. So focused on proving his worth to the captain. So predictable. You couldn't possibly trust someone like him with a bribe. He's too different from your old partner. But you couldn't trust that one either, could you? No, he knew too much. And he wasn't half as jaded as you are. His heart wasn't really in it. Aha, I see. You had a feeling he would end up going after you. So, you sold him out first. That's why he's here.
How did you?
What? So she's telling the truth! You take bribes?
No, well, maybe if it's enough. I mean, come on. It's just a goddamned bridge. What's the matter if we let rich people in at this point? They're no different from nobles. But I swear, I'd never gotten money from this. No, I'd never even seen this. Gazelle?
The guard's face contorted into a deeply wrinkled scowl. He looked beyond confused, lost. The song was reaching its final notes.
Aw, looks like your friend has a bad case of guilty conscience. That's okay. I'm no one to judge. Just let me go this time. I promise I'll be a good girl and head straight home. You won't even know I've been here.
Adder started to walk, a little spring on his step as something he barely recognized as his tail wagged behind him. He felt above the moon, completely drunk from this power trip. But he was far from safe still. A strong hand clasped Adder's wrist tightly. This told him all he needed to know, that this body wasn't his body, and this mind wasn't his mind.
But who else could it have been? You are the Joseph, aren't you? You really could buy this whole street if you wanted. It was you! It was you all along! What did you do to me?
I only gave you money.
You gave me cursed money! No, you cast a spell on me!
What in the world are you rambling about now? You sound like a madman!
Yeah, that's right. I have gone mad. It's not my fault. I'm not really a crook. She's a Sephi. She must have charmed me to do all those bad things. We're on to you, witch! Confess!
Every last fiber of her body was screaming at her to run. Joseph knew each and every corner of the royal pathway. She could have just hidden somewhere or outran two guards wearing heavy armor. That was the correct option. It was obvious to her. But that was not the choice she made. She pulled close to him and moved a smirk towards his ear instead.
I wouldn't waste any magic on you.
There wasn't any trace of fear in Joseph's mind as the guard grabbed her collar and pushed her against the railing. Didn't mean to do that. Can we go back? There's this history button. What does this do? Oh, cool. Not a speckle of resignation. It wasn't bravery either. There was nothing but anticipation. Adder didn't know the name of the eerie warmth that was creeping into her chest, as he watched the tip of his spear turn towards him in a slow motion. He had never felt anything quite so peaceful and thrilling before. But to her, this lost battle seemed to be worth as much as a victory. After all, she had been playing with fire her whole life. Getting burnt was an eventuality she had been ready to accept for years. She was tired of making choices. Fractions of a second before the end of her life could be sentenced, a scream shook the night.
Get your mitts off her, you creep!
Everyone turned around to look at the idiot yelling all the way down on the ground.
Think you can just bother her lass because she looks good enough for second helpings and then dessert? Well, you can't, all right? That's radish stew, and you'd make your ma cry if they knew. Let her go!
Adder had most certainly gone crazy.
What the? Oh, get lost, Sanford! This is official city business! It's got nothing to do with you!
City business, my ass! You're holding a gal up against the wall! I ain't got nothing to do with it, but it's still got everything to do with me! If it's so official, I'm gonna scream till the whole city wakes up and sees this!
No, you're not! Do something, rookie! Get rid of that drunkard!
What, you want me to throw my spear at some poor horn-eater now?
Who are you calling a horn-eater? Just hold up there!
Adder, the pudgy version of Adder that is, wasn't concerned with matters such as his complete lack of grace, agility, or strength. Moved by his sense of justice, he began climbing the column that led to the royal pathway. Of course, he never made it.
Hey! Are you still alive? Horn-eater!
Aw, poor kid. We can't just leave him to die all on his own. Guess he'll be jumping off the bridge yet, witch.
Puzzling as the scene was, Joseph realized that she didn't have another second to lose. With the guard's hand still firmly wrapped around her collar and pushing her back, Joseph threw all her weight on one leg, using her tail as leverage to complete a practiced spin that ended with her knee sinking deep between the deer's legs. He immediately dropped to the ground, but it wasn't quite enough to knock him out.
You little...
That's enough. Let's go.
But she kicked me! And she's a witch! She's...
I have no clue what this gazelle is or what she's not, but I can tell just fine what you are. I'm not leaving you another second with her. Get that old ass back to the barracks or I'm telling Ilograb what you just did!
It was the older guard's turn to go pale. He lowered his helmet and began limping in the other direction. The younger guard, however, stood in front of her a moment longer.
You, go home and don't let me catch you up here again.
Joseph only allowed herself to breathe easy again once both guards had disappeared from sight. Pride filled her lungs faster than air.
Good riddance.
She wasn't quite out of the woods yet, but she decided to savor this victory, a moment of peace which Joseph took to look over the railings one last time. Her wannabe savior now lay unconscious on the ground after hitting his head during the fall. And, in spite of how miserable the scene was, Adder could feel a smile forming on his, her face. He finally understood that, crazy or not, he was seeing what she was seeing, the way she saw it.
Did I scare him good?
Huh? You're awake? How in the name of oblivion can you be conscious after a fall like that? You must be at least 5 stories high. Were we even trying to... No. That doesn't matter now. Are you hurt? Should I call a doctor?
Are you all right, ma'am?
No. No, I'm not hurt. So, yes, that was nothing. I'm fine, thank you.
And that's all this book needs to feel fit as a fiddle.
What? No, I'm rather certain that's not how bodies work.
Oh, no, ma'am. You're thinking normal deer here. I'm something else entirely.
Drunk. Drunk is what you must be.
I sure hope not. It would be a real shame if some barrel fever ruined the memory of your pretty face.
It wouldn't make much of a difference either way.
What was that, ma'am?
Cad! You are a cad! Does this look like a good time to be flirting to you?
A distant yell bounced through the columns, clearly sending Joseph's heart straight out of her chest.
Don't know about flirting, but it sure looks like a good time to get walking.
Then get up and walk! I can't just leave you to your fate now!
No, you ain't. You ain't leaving no one, ma'am. Slum dwellers like me come a door a dozen. I'll just play dead for a while and see if I can spend the night in the morgue.
More patrols were surely drawing closer by the minute, demanding she made a choice pronto.
This doesn't end here, understood? I will make it up to you somehow, so don't you dare die until then. Promise you won't forget it.
Whoa, wait, hold up. Who am I supposed to look for? I didn't even catch your...
Neither Adder understood why she chose to run then, but she ran. She ran before that pitiful buck lying on the ground could finish voicing his request, pretending she hadn't heard him. But the answer she didn't give to the question he couldn't ask lingered a little longer in the space between old hopes and illusions, a sight that Adder found too engrossing to realize he was being left behind. Now, the gazelle was far out of his reach, and with every step, he felt her slipping away from his grasp a little further. He tried to keep up, but his legs wouldn't respond if it wasn't to her command. He tried to breathe, but he wasn't the master of his own lungs. His sight went dark, and his ears turned deaf, a violent torrent of foreign thoughts clobbering his brain as his mind dissolved back into the nether. And as suddenly as he'd left, he found himself one-eyed, famished, and back in the tent. Indeed, this had to be him. The same gazelle was still breathing over his snout, blue eyes fixed on him with the intensity of a burning sun. But who cares about having the greatest beauty they've ever seen in their life all over their body? Not Adder anymore, no. A million questions filled his mind. Was that the real life? Was it just fantasy? Were any more of his memories slipping through the many cracks in his flogged skull? Or had starvation finally started to take a toll upon his very brain? As was usually the case, however, his lips refused to wait for a finished script. They raced past Adder's mind, offering an answer to the only question he had never even asked.
Sep?
This word, so short and unassuming, seemed to awaken something in a girl that Adder was almost too dazed to recognize. He couldn't tell yet why her ears perked up or why his gaze was immediately drawn to her horns and the beautiful mass of red locks she was desperately pulling behind them. Disconcert washed away all conceit from her expression. It took away all the mesmerizing superiority from her eyes. Yes, she looked honestly and utterly tiny for a moment. Scared.
Where did you hear that?
Where did I... Oh! Ma'am, you're okay. You're gonna think I'm crazy, but I heard you say it just now. But not now. It was a long time ago. I was under Hirup's statue. I mean, you were, but I was you and not me because I was trying to save you, but I fell on my face and those guards laughed at me and, just how the hell did I forget any of this? Why can't I remember?
You're a gaze reader.
Anger hit her like a wave as the shock disappeared.
Why didn't you say so? Get away from me!
The fire in the orb began flickering erratically, casting disturbing shadows all over the tent.
Whoa, what's going on? What in the name of Atsa did I do now? Was I supposed to say something? Thank you. That the magic word?
Do you seriously expect me to believe that you...
Hold on. Sip? It was Sip, wasn't it? Oh crap, I just went and cussed a lady out in Gazelle speak, didn't I?
She looked at him with skepticism, her eyes squinted with barely concealed anger. She was clearly sizing him up.
No. You really don't have a clue of what you just did, do you?
Ma'am, if I ever got a clue in my life, it wasn't today. I'm just glad you're all right and that guard is in the dungeon or dead or something.
Her expression relaxed just a little as she considered Otter's words. Our poor boy had more than enough trying to get some air into his lungs.
Then you're telling me that you're a natural gaze reader? Do you even understand what this means?
Do I have to say yes or no to get out of here alive?
Otter was pretty sure that he had made a perfectly legitimate question in regards to his survival, and this was no joking matter, but he was thankful all the same when a small chuckle erased all the tension from the gazelle's face. He didn't feel any less confused about this whole ordeal, however.
Think of it this way. I tried to sneak a glance into your past through a tiny keyhole, while you just barged into mine through a door I didn't bother closing. That's on me, yes. I didn't even consider for a second I'd need to keep my guard up around you. But to casually stumble upon the basics of Cepheid, just like that, innately, it's something unheard of among the Akain.
Yeah?
I guess it's true what they say about yellow deer. You must have Barhan blood.
Otter would have normally disputed the last affirmation. Roe deer took pride in being real deer, no gazelle blood at all, nope. 100% deer, with those that don't have horns. But this was clearly not the moment, nor the company, to say that.
In Sirnar, please.
You read my mind.
Okay, I think we'll continue the story from here in the next episode. And, before I end this one, we'll take a moment to read a little bit of the Encyclopedia. So, if you're not interested in finding out more stuff about... I guess we could read the dictionary. We've got some new words here as well. Ones that we didn't have in our previous episode, I think. So yeah, if you're not into learning more about these terms here, then this is your cue to stop watching right here. But if you are interested in learning about the meaning of these words here, then keep on watching because we will start delving into this. And yeah, we will continue the story in the next episode. So Almutasen or Mostasaf is an ancient word used to refer to the inspector of markets and workshops. Note, this is a real concept. Follow this link to know more about them. Spanish only. Well, I don't read Spanish, so I'm not going to do that. So, inspector of markets and workshops. Assegai. A short throwing spear. And there's a link to know more about them, because apparently that's a real thing as well. Basaktet. Basaktet is known as the first language since it was spoken by the gods themselves. It is extremely complex, with sentences being a huge conglomeration of words that keep changing depending on the word that comes before and after, to form long syllable strings of what can only be defined as nonsense for the untrained, the very trained, and anyone who hasn't spent at least 40 years listening to it. With the rise of Sirnar during the second creation and the apparition of Herub, Barhans took it upon themselves to preserve this ancient language in order to please their creator. The only bloodlings that still speak Basaktet, though somewhat simplified, are Ibex. Barhan lingo, or gazelle speak, is notable for containing traces of Basaktet, taken out of context and often misconstructed. For example, Ishkap, literally from a place, translates to dolt, as it's derived from etishkapsah, one that falls from their chair. Okay. Horn eater. Slang used to refer to a male deer who shows interest in another male deer, especially one with big horns, a male or female gazelle, since they're both horned. The word is, in its origin, a lewd reference to the posture necessary for two male stags to partake in such an act, and its meaning expanded to cover gazelles as well as deer caravaneers. Its meaning expanded to cover gazelles as well, as deer caravaneers extended the rumor that all gazelles were male in the first years of contact due to their horns. While not illegal in any way, they face heavy social stigma. Roebucks have a fame for being interested in gazelles, so they are particularly vocal on their dislike for horn eaters. Okay. Karnmay. Karnmay is the name of the legendary deer practice of butting heads, a need that seems to run in their blood. Karnmay tournaments are held for anything from deciding a come-of-age maiden's groom to settling minor disputes outside courts, or even just for mere fun. Official Karnmay has to be approved by the court, and while often a complement to bigger events, some people attend said celebrations exclusively to watch duels. Some of the strongest deer became known kingdom-wide, earning fortune, fame, does, and sometimes even lordship, thanks to their achievements in these battles. Fans of Karnmay would get so impatient waiting between events that they'd often gather in narrow streets to watch other deer fight in unsanctioned duels, leading to the birth of Karnmay alleys, some of the shadiest corners of the city. The rules of official Karnmay are fairly simple, though they need not necessarily apply in Karnmay alleys and more colloquial events. Both deer must stay within the boundaries of the ring at all times. If either deer touches the ground with 3 limbs, they automatically lose. If one fighter manages to lock their horns around others, they may not be separated while both fighters have their hooves on the ground. The fighters may not remove the other's clothes or armor, or otherwise interfere with their belongings in a way that could disturb their opponent. Alright, Sandfur. Slur used to refer to rose. Sand refers to the similarity of their yellow-orange fur to that of a gazelle's. Sirnar. Sirnar is the language of the steppes, a simplified version of Basaktet, mainly differentiated in the composition of words and the use of spaces for clarification. Sirnar began being recognized as a different language by the end of the War of Two, but it was considered inferior to Basaktet until the Barhan Rebellion, with the fall of the kingdom of Basakserat. Deer population has been increasing steadily since they discovered that the gods wouldn't smite them for breathing in between words. Okay. Right. So that's all the dictionary words we've collected at the moment. And maybe in the next episode we'll then go on to read about the characters. We'll see. But this is where I'm ending this episode. And in the next one, we'll continue the story from here and see what happens next. So apparently Otter has some innate gift to read minds. I'm sure we'll probably learn more about it in the next episode or sometime after. But for now, thank you so much for watching and spending a little of your time with me here today. It was lovely to have you. Please remember to be kind to yourself. Have a lovely rest of your day, and I will see you again next time.